Alrighty, everyone, welcome back for another episode of Owning Your Sexual Self. I'm so excited. We have a repeat guest on the show today, and we connected back in May of 2021 when we were talking about sexological body work. And so I have Darshana Avila on the show today with me today. And if you want to go back, that again was May 2021. If you want to go back and listen to that episode before jumping into this, or if you want to listen to this one today and then jump back to that one, that could work too. Yeah, I think originally you slid into my DMs and you were like, "Hey, I would like to come on your show," or maybe I found you. I don't even remember how we connected so long ago, but I'm really excited to have you back on the show and for our conversation today to just expand in what's possible when we think about sexuality as the portal, not just our own, personal pleasure, but also for that cultural transformation. So we're diving into what you call erotic wholeness and yeah, connecting to that power and purpose. And yeah, thank you so much for coming back on the show today.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be in conversation with you again.
Yeah. So tell us a little, okay, as when we first got on here before we hit record, we recorded that episode in May of 2021, and then here I am just in my little Netflix binge watching Sex, Love, and Goop, and here you show up on this TV show, and I'm like, what? I was like, I've had a sexuality podcast. This is so cool. And I swear, yeah, a couple of those episodes, episode 4, with Jaya doing the erotic blueprint workshop, that episode was so powerful. I do a lot of blueprint work with clients. But that whole show, I'm like, you have to like, I'm like, these are real people. Like, I've met some of these people. Like, this is not like they just, made this shit up and created a show out of it. Like, this was, and then you had your couple that you worked with on your Instagram. You guys did a live stream after the show, and
Yeah.
it was just such a beautiful experience. And I feel like I just like derailed us, but please, I would love to hear a little bit about that experience
Yeah,
from
I
you.
mean, hey, it's an exciting thing that
It
happened.
was,
I mean,
yeah.
and I know that it's exciting for me because I was a part of it, but it really it's been years now, and I get that it's actually very exciting for other sexuality professionals as well. That
Mhm.
like all of a sudden here's somebody like Gwyneth Paltrow who has, a lot of resources and a big platform showcasing things that most people don't even know is a possibility.
Yeah.
Very, very few people, in comparison to how many people are on this planet, are aware that they can explore their sexuality in these far more, let's call them embodied ways, experiential ways, outside of the box, beyond talk therapy, which talk therapy has its place, certainly. And most clients that I work with, I would say, have been through talk therapy, sometimes specifically sex therapy. And
Mhm.
if that's helped them, it's only taken them to a certain point. And it's like now all of a sudden the show told people there's more that's possible for you.
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
was very exciting and continues to be. I people contact me and come to work with me all the time because they're like, we saw this show and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that show came out in October 2021. So
Mhm.
here we are talking in October 2025. 4 years ago that happened. Yeah.
That is, I refuse to believe that because I'm not kidding when I say I share that show with clients like on the regular. To me it's like it just came out last week because
Yeah.
it's so much in my conversation. I just feel like that show was so well done and it just felt from the clinician perspective, like it felt so raw, so real. It got a little weird, right, in the space of sexuality. I loved like the getting on the floor, the one of the other workers and clinicians that you guys had on there, like doing the animal noises and that. I'm like, God, I'm like, this is the work. Like this is where it's
It's
so
the
fun
work. It is.
and I love, yeah, just that you spoke to the somatic side of it too. I've been a clinician doing talk therapy for a decade now, and it wasn't until I would say in like the last year that I started to learn. I got trained in the somatic side, and that has been so transformational for my clients that I'm working with because yeah, we can talk about the shit until we're blue in the face and you can process it, from A to Z as many times as you want, but until you get in to the body and it's like,
Right.
what does pleasure feel like in your body? What is power?
Right.
What is safety? What does that actually feel like? Um, and
Exactly.
can you name that? Yeah. And I think we are so good at naming the bad in our body. Oh, I have like sore neck, or I need to stretch my body, or throughout my back, or I can tell you for sure what's happening when I don't feel safe.
Yeah.
but it's
And
like
that's true
almost
for
the
most
opposite.
people that, that's the
Yeah.
reality that many people are living inside of because our culture on the whole is a pretty disembodied one
Mhm.
and very much motivated by pain. I mean, and this is me, I'm going to go on like a bit of a cultural critique right now, by which I mean like the Western medical complex, right? It's
Mhm.
all about treating symptoms. So we have a really familiar conditioning that something's wrong. Like, let me find a medicine that'll make that better, or give
Mhm.
me the quick fix or that'll mask it. But that very, very seldom is getting to the root of what's really going
Yeah.
on. And a somatic approach is all about getting to the root, and it's getting to the root of unwinding what's beneath that pain, and all that involves the conditioning, the mental stuff, the limiting beliefs, and so on and so forth. The parts work. I've gone on to include like quite a bit of internal family systems in my body of work in the last many
Mhm.
years, and that's in there too. But as a hands-on practitioner, so my work involves hands-on, hands-in.
Yeah.
Like I do deep diving erotic work with my clients, and that has been the case for years, before the show came out. But it's amazing what happens, to your point, when someone gets to have the felt sense of safety, the relaxation, the spaciousness be the bedrock or the foundation from which their arousal arises. It's
Hmm.
like, oh, okay, here, this is me. I'm relaxed. I feel good. And now I get to explore my turn on.
Hmm.
Now I get to be touched in ways that I've never experienced before. Now I get to have a sexual experience that is actually moving in an attuned pace to what my nervous system needs, as opposed to me performing for my partner or going along with it, which is very, very typical, right? So it is game changing. And, therapists sending their clients to me is honestly how most of my business is
Yeah.
it's like, oh, and I love it. I mean, it's such an incredible thing to have been a part of a show that I think is actually going to be pretty timeless, right?
Hmm.
Because we know that in the wider sense, as I said, most people still have no idea what the scope of possibilities are for themselves. So we need
Hmm.
to keep talking about it. We need to keep demonstrating it, because that's how change happens, cultural change, personal change. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's pretty
Hmm.
special.
Yeah. Yeah, why do you think it works? Because I have so many clients or even students in the program that I mentioned that I'm coaching with now, and they're often coming in like, I've done years and years of talk therapy. I've tried individual, I've tried sex therapy, we've tried couples counseling, we've tried all the things. And then it's not until they get into doing the somatic work, right? It almost feels like the missing piece. I think both are almost equally as necessary. But in your own words or like your expertise, like why do you think the body, like the somatic side of it actually works for people?
Yeah, because unless the body is being actively centered, I was going to say included, but I'm going to say centered in the experience, the body is going to keep defaulting to the protective patterning that it knows, the
Hmm.
bracing, the dissociating, like whatever goes on there. So sure, you can sit there with your therapist or your coach and have a great 50-minute talk session, but then when you're in bed with your partner 3 nights later, and that familiar sense of like, oh God, like here we go again, I'm gonna have to just like go with the flow, doing something I don't want to have, having sex I don't want to have, the body is going to just slide right back in alignment with what it's been doing all along.
Hmm.
So in the space that I hold with the somatic work, you get to actually have new physical experiences that you're living through. The body gets to have a different experience of what it's like. As I said, my kind of my sweet spot, what I love introducing people to and where the transformation happens is at the intersection of relaxation and arousal. And that's sometimes like on its surface can feel a little confusing to people, where it's like, but wait, isn't the whole point of arousal that like you're excited and the
Turned on,
energy is
yeah.
up and it's
Hmm.
high? Yes, and
Hmm.
but when the foundation beneath that is one where your nervous system is really regulated. When I say relaxed, it doesn't mean falling asleep, checking out. It means that you're actually in a receptive state so that whatever stimulation and arousal is coming in or arising from within you, you can really receive that well and perceive. I like this. I don't like that. Here's how we can adjust. Oh, I now want to move faster. I want more intensity. Time to scale that back a little bit. And so we become more responsive to what's going on in our sexual experience in a context like that. And the reality for the vast, vast, vast majority of us is we've never had it this way.
Yeah.
Even those of us who've had great sex, arguably,
Mhm.
haven't always had the opportunity for that degree of presence to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And understandably, when we're having partnered sex in particular, like, yeah, of course we're motivated to want it to be good for everybody. Like unless you got some like personality disorder going on, chances are good that you want your sex to be a mutually satisfying, mutually enjoyable thing. But many of us don't actually know how to create those
Mhm.
conditions.
Mhm.
And particularly for the women that are listening, for those of us who are acculturated girls and women, we understand ourselves, even if this isn't your conscious thought, we understand ourselves as there for the pleasure of another. We are in service as opposed to being centered in the experience that we're having. And so there's a lot of performing, there's a lot of tolerating, there's a lot of, okay, well, this is good enough. So, like I'm just going to keep going. Many, like I would say one of the most common things that clients come to me with is the very earnest acknowledgement that they don't know what they like
Yeah.
because their sex has never been about exploring that, which is so sad when you think about it.
Mhm. I
Really,
know. Yeah.
like, could you imagine if all of us in our pubescent stage and our adolescent stage got to explore sexuality on our terms,
Mhm.
got to be immersed in something experiential where we're learning about what feels good in our body, how to create really consensual and creative experiences with other people, where sex wasn't just about achieving some kind of like status of like, yeah, the orgasm, or yeah, I faked the orgasm so I don't have to acknowledge that I'm not actually having an orgasm. And like that's what many of us have just taken on as normal. And it
Mhm.
is not. It
Mhm.
certainly doesn't have to be your status quo. So yeah, the somatic work, that experience in the body of a new way of relating, of a new possibility for your erotic expression and your sexual encounters, once you have those imprints, when I work with clients, it's not a one and done. Like I see clients either over an arc of sessions, or many of my clients, thank you to Sex, Love, and Goop, I have people come from all over the world in different parts of the country to spend like several days in like a deep immersive container with me. And even inside of that, you get multiple experiences to start giving yourself a new baseline that
Mhm.
you then build from. But back to what you said earlier, that there, and I agree that there's merit to things like talk therapy and
Mhm.
counseling and what have you. If you want that to stay really integrated,
Yes.
that's where continuing to do the more, when we hear terms psychosomatic, psychology, the brain,
Mhm.
somatic of the body, right? So
Mhm.
we want the two together. We want a psychosomatic transformation. And I can give people the somatic part in a really, really big way. But
Yeah.
because I'm not going to stay their therapist who's meeting with them every week for 3 years, they need somebody else to also continue with the integration
Mhm.
of the psychological part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I think another thing to the just the time length of it. I feel like doing the somatic work is almost like a kickstart to the transformation. Like it's like a booster and an accelerator in a way. And I know I'm not saying like you said, I definitely know it's not a one and done. I definitely know it's not necessarily short term or long term. But I just think the felt sense and just the experience behind it from so many people that I've heard, even in my own sessions, right? When I started learning somatics, I started to bring it in with my therapy clients, and they're like, just wow, right? Like the impact,
Yeah.
like that was so different. And I've been meeting with these people for a year, 2 years, right? Like, and doing just the talk therapy side of it. And so,
Yeah.
that just
And I
feels like
think it
a
can go
huge.
both ways. And I think that has a lot to do with trauma, that
Mhm.
buzzword, like so somebody who has lived through a lot of trauma and has the imprints of that and the reactivity of that very active and alive in their system might actually need some of that therapy or a lot of it up front before they feel available to the somatic piece of it. And then other people, the somatics to your point, is a bit of a rocket booster on
Hmm.
the wider process. So again, there's room for different people to have different experiences based on whatever their personal situation is. I never want anybody to listen to a conversation like this and be like, oh, it has to be one way, because
Yeah.
couldn't be further from the truth. But there's a lot of potential here that we both know in our respective areas of expertise, like for the transformation to happen.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we haven't even got it to our topic, and listen to the show.
Well, we're always in the
We're just
topic.
jamming. I knew it. Yeah, I knew. I was like, this is going to be so easy to record because it's so genuine. But I really want to speak to the erotic wholeness piece of the
Yeah.
work that you're doing. And so, for listeners that might be new to your world, how do you define erotic wholeness, and why is it so central to your mission that you're out here?
Yeah. So that's my body of work, erotic wholeness. I'll give a little background, which is to say, in the early days, I called myself a sex and intimacy coach, a somatic sex and intimacy
Hmm.
coach, right? And that's not an inaccurate thing to say, but the more that I've been in private practice for 11 years now, and the more that I have been exploring this work professionally, the more that I've lived my own experience, I started recognizing that speaking about it from the lens of sexuality alone was incredibly limiting to a lot of people. So erotic wholeness, let me break that down. Erotic is you can think of it as the umbrella term that sexuality falls under, but that's not the only thing that's there. Now, many of us are, if we hear the word erotic, we think it's directly equal to sex and sexuality, but I would invite you to consider eroticism more like life force.
Hmm.
So it's your creativity, it's sexuality, sure, but it's also dynamism, activism, emotions, sensuality. It's anywhere that we are channeling our passion, our aliveness. And there's a lot of broad applications for that. And in this day and age, many of us are channeling it into activism, into the causes that we care about, and how we are creatively rising up to be a part of wider cultural change, right? And the wholeness piece, this draws a little bit from versions of parts work. I
Hmm.
mentioned
Hmm.
earlier internal family systems, and then I also, for me personally, a big influence in my life around that draws more from like a depth psychology standpoint, a Jungian philosophy, and so on and so forth. Where wholeness is, you can think about it as like this intrinsic self that is always, is, you can say, unblemished, unbroken. It like really has all of the wisdom, all of the resource. So if we consider that our natural state of being, what we're doing in the work of erotic wholeness is we're clearing away and resolving anything that is blocking us from that.
Yeah.
So it's not about like, I need to become something I'm not already, so much as how do I get in touch with, how do I connect to that part of me that knows, in the case of our eroticism, what feels good, what lights me up, what I want to channel my passion into.
Mhm.
So even though it's true that I do work a lot around sex and intimacy and relationships, and I love it, it's not like that is siloed from any other part of our lives. The way we show up there is not going to be wildly different from the way we're showing up elsewhere. That said, and this might sound like a contradiction, but stay with me, I work with a lot of people who are very successful, right? They're like professionals who are at the top of their game. If they're in an intimate partnership, they might say that in many ways they've got a great partnership, but for their sex, they're living vibrant lives. They're out there doing things. They feel a sense of connection to whatever their flavor of spirituality is. Like most of my clients have a lot going great for them already. And
Mhm.
so when I say like the way you show up here is probably the way you're showing up elsewhere, usually the common denominator is that you're not being fully honest with yourself.
Mhm.
And like there's a more authentic, more expansive expression. There is a deeper, more embodied sense of your personal power
Mhm.
that you could be tapped into. And
Mhm.
when you actually forge the connection with that, it is just, it's game changing.
Yeah.
And I get to witness it day in and day out with the people that I serve, and it's such a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine like just like it's like these the healing hands, like the healing work that you're doing for so many. And yeah, certainly not a one size fits all, and not, I'm sure you've not seen the same experience between two different people. Just how unique and genuine and authentic this is for people, and also just to speak on the bravery and the courage that it takes for someone
So
to
much,
step into doing this type of work, even
so
like
much.
you're really opening yourself to so much. And I love the wholeness that you just spoke to. And it's not about necessarily like creating the new, but it's like it just gave me that sense of like coming back to home, like coming back to me.
That is I often liken it to a deep homecoming.
Hmm.
And the beauty there is it isn't a one size fits all, and it doesn't go the same way for all of my clients. And things that happen often enough that there's like themes. One of the big pieces is a lot of my clients, as they are accessing like the more expansive, ecstatic pleasure states, are also making space for grief, right?
Hmm.
Like there's a clearing of something long held in the body that maybe they didn't even consciously feel much awareness around,
Yeah.
but that's blocking the very vitality that we're speaking of. It's blocking that full, like all systems go, like I've got my life force energy available to channel it where I want it. Are the things that we haven't metabolized in terms of sorrow and loss and grief and rage are part of our eroticism too.
Hmm.
And when you think, like, an example that I often give is like, if you yourself, dear listener, you Rachel, any of us, like think about a time that you've been like really distraught over something, crying perhaps, like the way that when you're really deeply grieving, like your whole body can be racked with tears. Okay, so we're talking about sensation,
Hmm.
emotion, movement, which also happen to be the elements that show up when someone's having a really amazing orgasm, like when they're in the climax. So the more we can lean into eros and eroticism as life force and stop this very like artificial, this is good, this is bad, grief is a problem, pleasure is a good thing, and really just see them all as part and parcel with what it is to be human. And that when we make space for the totality of ourselves and of one another, we feel better. We
Hmm.
are more on purpose. Our relationships are rooted in genuine intimacy, and thriving is possible.
Hmm.
And I don't know about you, but I'm like so not interested in the settling and the striving that we have normalized in our culture. Like I want us thriving,
Yeah.
So one of my little catchphrases is that like erotic wholeness is about personal liberation that is in service to our collective liberation.
Mm.
And the reason that I say that is that the more we've got individuals like me, like you, like anybody listening, making that very courageous choice, to your point, it takes bravery, it takes courage. You're going to probably feel like nervous as all get out, but the more you choose to say, yes, I'm going to liberate myself, I'm going to unleash this life force energy as fully as I can, that does serve our collective.
Hmm. Hmm.
That is how, again, like wider cultural change can happen. We create new normals for ourselves and each other. And that's my why. That's what I'm for.
Yeah. Well, sign me up. Like I'm
Come
sold, sold.
on over.
And where, yeah, just on where is it that you're based again? What state are you in?
I'm in Oakland, California,
Okay,
and
right.
so my San Francisco Bay Area, and I, as I said, people come from all over, so don't let location stop you. And sometimes I go to other places and
Yeah.
show up and make myself available. So if you want what I've got, let me know. Talk to
Yeah.
me.
I love it. And okay, so transitioning a little bit, you talk about the relationship between pleasure, power, and purpose.
Yeah.
Can you unpack how these intersect for you in the work that you do?
Totally. And I mean, we were kind of just already getting into this. It's like
Yeah.
pleasure, you mentioned before at the start that like most of us have a far clearer sense of pain than pleasure. And I would agree with that. Like we're used to the signals that our body gives us around, like, oh, I got a crick in my neck. Oh, my hips are hurting. Oh, this position I'm having sex in may not actually be comfortable for me, whatever it is, right? Like, so discomfort and pain we're familiar with.
Yeah.
Pleasure if you see this as a spectrum, we have a similar awareness then of what feels good in our body, what lifts our spirit, what really brings us into that state where we're like present and engaged and excited to be doing, seeing, speaking about, what have you, whatever the thing is. So
Mhm.
when we are in our pleasure, we're a more open channel for this erotic energy, this life force energy to flow through. Pain has a way, it's important because pain is a signal. Pain can be a teacher. So it absolutely has its place, but very, very often pain will take us out of the availability to meet other things that are going on in our lives. It can become all consuming. Whereas pleasure, if we're in a healthy relationship, actually makes us more available to the
Mhm.
wider scope of our lives. So the intersection that it has with purpose, the intersection that it has with power, is that the more you're actually attending to your pleasure. And I want to be clear that I don't only mean sex. And for many people, it might have really little to do with sex. Maybe you're in a period of celibacy, or you're single, or you're asexual, you're just not into it, like whatever. Or you're like, yeah, sex is cool, but it's not the thing for me, right? It can be sexual, but pleasure can be so much more expansive.
Mhm.
And I want to acknowledge that I'm drawing very heavily from the influence of people such as Adrienne Marie Brown, who, if you do not know who she is, I mean, please go get her book, Pleasure Activism. Go follow her on Instagram, like godsend of a woman. And so like Adrienne Marie Brown, who very much carries a legacy of other Black intersectional feminists, such as Audre Lorde, for instance. Like I'm speaking, like I'm carrying their legacies forward when I speak about pleasure as activism, pleasure as something radical in the face of a dominant culture that really doesn't actually want us to have it. Like, like very, very prescriptive, superficial types of pleasure are allowed for certain people. But this more expansive, creative, it gets to be your shape, size, and flavor version of pleasure.
Mhm.
Yeah, the powers that be are actually not very interested in us having access to that. So when you do, not only is it radical, but you have the possibility then of feeling more connected to that intrinsic power that each of us has: power to choose, power to act, power to use our voice, power to say, I want to be in this situation, I don't want to be in that situation. It's agency.
Mhm.
And then as far as purpose goes, in the same way that there can be a lot of tolerating, settling, what have you, that goes on in sexual context or intimate context, a lot of us end up doing that with regard to fulfilling our sense of purpose in life, meaning. And I want to be clear that as somebody who has the incredible privilege of my purpose being aligned with my work, it can be really easy for you to hear me talk about that and be like, yeah, sure, you get to say that, Darshana. What about me? It's your vocation and profession are not the only ways to live your purpose.
Mhm.
Your purpose could be the way you are raising your children. Your purpose can be the art that you're making. It could be the community that you're tending. There's so many ways to feel connected to that deep sense of my soul is here for this.
Mhm.
And so that when pleasure is like beneath all that and feeding into and infusing our purpose and our power, like we become an unstoppable force. So it's like this is the thing that I imagine you hear it. It's like I get excited about this.
Yes.
Like, because I want us to be having these conversations. I doom scroll with the best of them. I get sucked into the latest in the politics and the social justice world, and things that can feel so heavy sometimes. I'm right there with you. I'm not negating. None of this is to bypass it. It's to say, this is what actually allows us to get resourced
Mm.
and be responsive to that. And that's where we, again, unstoppable force, the change that we want to see is not going to arise from us being depressed and depleted and worn thin. It's going to arise and we're saying, no, I'm going to prioritize my rest. I'm going to prioritize taking good care of myself. I'm going to prioritize doing something purely for the pleasure of it so
Mhm.
that I actually have inspiration. I have some fuel in the tank so that I can meet these other things that are going on in life with that life force energy flowing at full capacity. So it's, there is a very clear intersection between these themes.
Yeah, absolutely. And just speaking through to the expansion of all of that, it's like, how do we show up in the world when we are living from our place of pleasure and in our pleasure, right? How do I talk to people? How do I present myself? What choices am I making throughout the day? I just feel, yeah, like for women specifically, when we're in that full body, eroticism, pleasure, erotic wholeness, if you will, I'll take a page from your book. Like, what can we do? What do we get to do with that? And
Mhm.
of course, right? Of course, the higher ups, the man, if you will, right? Like, of course they don't want us to be in that. That makes sense. And fuck that. Like
Totally
it
fuck
is my
that.
right. It is my birthright. Pleasure is our birthright to be in that lived sense.
Yes, you want to fuck the patriarchy, tend to your erotic wholeness. You want to fuck the systems of oppression, the racism, the misogyny, the xenophobia, the transphobia, all of these things that are so rampant right now in a actually small portion,
Mhm.
but with very loud voices. It's like fuel yourself.
Mhm.
And recognize another a play on words that I like to offer is a lot of times we hear the term self-centered and we equate that with selfishness.
Yeah.
And I want to invite you to consider self-centered, centered in self. And
Mhm.
what is possible when that's the basic location that you move out from.
Yeah.
When you really, really are in your center, in integrity, in alignment, when you're not depleted and frazzled and in constant reactivity.
Mhm.
Now, the thing that I also want to say is if you're like, yeah, again, sounds nice. How do I get there? It is an easier said than done thing. I'm not going to act like it's otherwise. This is not easy, even if it's simple. Okay. So the
Yeah. Yeah.
simpleness is that this is pretty straightforward. Where it can feel less than easy is that because our nervous systems are so conditioned to the reacting as opposed to the responding, because our lives are generally set up to be producing and attaining and going and doing as opposed to let me rest, let me pause, let me consider what I really want here. It does take effort. And people need help. I need help. I'm sure like I always say, don't trust a therapist who doesn't have their own therapist. Don't trust a practitioner who's not doing their own work.
Yeah.
None of us is meant to do this alone.
Mhm.
None of us. That
Mhm.
I rarely use like all or nothing kind of statements. I'm using a nothing statement when I say none of us could or should do this by ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing. That's
Mhm.
a beautiful thing because you get to find the Rachel Maines, the Darshana Avilas of the world, whoever it is that you resonate with.
Mhm.
And maybe we are a step or two or five further along the path that you want to work down. Like I'm like no gurus, no demagogues here. It's just I've chosen this path in life, or I could say life has chosen it for me, and I get to share my wisdom and experience with the people who want it.
Mhm.
And be in just complete surrender to the guidance of another person you trust,
Mhm.
not to
Mhm.
make them your higher power or the be all end all, but to say that we deserve guidance, support, counsel. We deserve and very much need community.
Absolutely.
So these are really big parts of it too. Like we have isolationism so woven into our dominant culture right now.
Mhm.
And we hear it all the time, the epidemic of loneliness, the way that technology has kind of made us far more isolated and not really available to connecting in a true, genuine, intimate way with other humans. Like I'm sure anybody who's listening has heard some version of that somewhere.
Mhm.
So this too is like part of how this becomes the answer back to that, the antithesis of that. Like
Mhm.
get yourself in community, get yourself a guide that you trust, get yourself a commitment to pleasure practices and things that fill your cup and share. Share it. Don't hoard it in here. You can be self-centered, but don't be selfish.
Yeah, thank you. I love the clarification that's yeah, that center in self. I think that that's really going to help a lot of people that are listening to this because that is a common pushback that I get when I preach this, if you will. It's like, well, isn't that selfish? Like, aren't I here to serve or here to help others or here to guide others? Like saying, yeah, yes, yes, and self first.
The whole secure your own oxygen mask thing that like it's not for nothing.
Yeah,
Like it's real. Like you can't help the other person if you're not breathing.
exactly.
This is no different than that.
Exactly. And you were speaking a little bit to more of the practical side, and so I love to get in that here as we're getting towards the end. But if you could identify one or two practices that listeners could explore, maybe to begin connecting to their erotic wholeness, where would you suggest somebody starts with that?
So the simplest way is to recognize that you have five senses, or
Mhm.
six if we're counting that like extra sensory perception, but you've got your five senses, right? So you can hear, you can see, you can taste, you can smell, you can touch. And when you slow down how you are engaging with those senses and be very intentional in one way I love to do it, I happen to live near easy access to nature where I could like go out on trails and be away from people. If you have that, or if you have a city park, or if you have a plant in your house or something, like anything,
Hmm.
nature is a wonderful ally to explore and engage with your senses.
Hmm.
So you can do a swift little sense inventory, which is to say, like, go through the body. What do I, as I look around the space that I'm occupying, whether that's the walk in the woods or your park, all the examples that I gave, it could be your living room. Like, what do I see? What does my gaze land on that actually like captures my attention?
Hmm.
What do the same for all the others? Play a piece of music, or listen to something like sonic toning, or what have you, and notice how it feels in your body. You can play with fragrances, essential oils, incense, what have you, ripe fruits, which you get to taste those, touch those, smell those. Like again, like the senses are a beautiful entry point, and again, it's simple. It is. It doesn't have, don't make this complicated. Seriously, if you're looking to me to tell you like your 17-step protocol, like, no,
No, we
no,
we need to simplify things. That's part of this.
simplify it. So slowing down and really engaging with your senses and being curious about what delights you and what doesn't. You want to zhuzh this up a little, and you have a partner or a friend in your life who you trust. A really fun thing to do, you'll eliminate the sense of sight for one of you. And you could do like feeding, tasting, touching, little like blindfolded experiences for each other.
Hmm.
It can be super, super fun. Whatever you're doing, a solo exploration, a partnered exploration, slowness matters.
Yeah.
Don't rush yourself. Space it out, slow it down so that you can actually be present.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I'll offer, and there's a close correlation, you've got four allies of erotic embodiment, and they are your breath, your sound, your movement, and your touch.
Mm-hmm.
Breath, sound, movement, touch. They're always here. Lean in,
Mm-hmm.
use them. I did a little quickie reel on Instagram yesterday about this. Like breathe, make a little noise, let your body move,
Hmm.
give some self-touch to yourself, compression, soft caresses, nails on your scalp, like whatever feels good to your body. When we're breathing, sounding, moving, touching, what we're doing is engaging with our senses, at least some of them. What we're doing is we're offering our nervous system a chance to discharge and release tension that it might be holding very unconsciously, that it is ready to let go. And we're making ourselves more response able.
Hmm.
Responsible. You're catching on that I like plays on words. like to respond to what's going on around us. So, your question was like, how do you start to explore your erotic wholeness, right? How do you start to explore pleasure? Before we can do any of the more quote unquote advanced things, we need to have some of this basic capacity online, right?
Hmm.
So the things that I just suggested about exploring through your senses or leaning into your four allies of erotic embodiment, think about those as foundational things that
Hmm.
you can then build on in a bajillion different directions.
Yeah.
You're walking into a meeting that you feel stressed about. Use your four allies to do a little quick something, something to discharge some of that stress.
Hmm.
Use your senses as a means of, oh, here's my focus on things that give me pleasure. You're showing up for some sexy time with your boo. Like, great. Use sensuality
Hmm.
as a way to create a more expansive, robust, intimate connection. Do it for yourself. Like, so you can definitely start to like iterate and get creative with these as your foundation, but master the basics first.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So well said. I have nothing to add. I'm just
Oh,
over here like head nodding, like
good.
yes, yes, yes. And I wanted maybe I do have okay, it's just a piggyback. Like you can't do these things wrong necessarily. I often get when I'm talking about somatic work, I'll get the questions like, what time of day should I be doing this? How long should I be doing it for? Am I doing it enough? I'm like, you're just be, just do,
Yeah,
just allow it to unfold, like allow it to feel good, and then trust that that is complete for you. There's no
yep.
one to say like, oh, well, it didn't count because you didn't do it for 10 minutes or that, that type of language. Like we're not here to shame you, we're here to expand you.
Yeah. All the recovering perfectionists, raise your hand.
Yes, myself
Right?
included.
Myself included, and compassion for that.
Yeah.
The ones who are saying, what's the right time of day? What's the right duration? Like, you are not a bad person because you want to do it well.
Hmm.
Also recognize how that very same perfectionism, that conditioning, that striving is the exact thing we're actually trying to unwind. And there isn't, you're 100% correct, Rachel. You can't do this wrong. There's a reason why I'm not giving you the convoluted 17 steps to bliss speech right now and saying, use these things that are intrinsic. Like, because I am the queen of overcomplicating, y'all. Like, let's not overcomplicate this.
Yeah.
Let's actually try to stick with these very simple things. Simple and profound are not mutually exclusive.
Hmm.
Some of the most profound states that I have accessed, the experiences that I've had, and I've had a lot, like I do this work professionally and I've had some incredible lived experiences very personally in this body. Like, rarely, if ever, has it been because I'm doing something so elaborate or complicated or what have you. Generally speaking, it's that I'm leaning into these basics and I'm giving them spaciousness.
Hmm.
I am being consistent in my repetition of them. So that part counts. And
Hmm.
if you are somebody who likes rhythms and rituals that have consistency to them, make it a morning practice if that feels good to you.
Yeah.
Not because that's the right way, but
Yeah.
if it's what feels good to you, great.
Mm.
Really, all I want for you is to just start doing this enough that it begins to become second nature for you.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then all the other bells and whistles will just naturally come into place.
Yeah. Yeah. Or yeah, when you're ready for that, reach out to people like
What
you. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, to end, like tell us a little bit more about your offerings, how people can connect with you, yeah, get in contact with you, all that.
Yeah. So the primary way that I support people right now is in my private practice. And if you happen to be listening to this and you're in the Bay Area of, wider San Francisco, California, hit me up if you want something local. But if you're not and you're really like, I want to commit to a deep transformation, there are ways to make that happen. The private work with me is my joy. I love the one-to-one, or I do work with couples as well. And then sometimes I do group programs or retreats or group experiences.
Mhm.
So the best way to keep in touch is get on my email list, hop on over to my website, check out what's going on there. And then you can be one of the first people to hear, like, I'm starting my own podcast. and I have a YouTube channel with content on it and stuff like that. My old Instagram account that you mentioned, me doing that awesome live with the
Yeah.
couple, I got banned from Instagram in 2023.
Oh
Thank you
my
very much,
gosh.
sex negativity. So I've made a comeback this year with
Mhm.
with IG, but a lot of my old content is gone. But you can still learn. There's nuggets out there
Yeah.
for those who are hungry for them.
Yeah. And do you have an upcoming retreat, Radical Rejuvenation? Did I hear, is that something that you're doing?
Yes, that's in
Okay.
December. So
Okay,
if you're
perfect.
interested in the possibility of a retreat, I don't know when this is going to hit the airwaves, but we can talk about that. It's a deep like reset and everything we've talked about today. It's very much in alignment with that.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much again for coming back
Yeah.
on the show. And this was such a nice, refreshing conversation. I think again, just like a great follow-up to the episode that we did a few years ago. And love that you're still in this work. Love that you've expanded your practice so much and truly are working, as you said, with people all over the world. This is it's so necessary. And the fact that it's available is I just think pretty badass, again, for the people that
Yeah,
are
I
struggling
will
to do
take it.
this.
It's so great to be in this conversation, Rachel. Thank you.